My name is Sean McNutt, and I'm a guy with AI. Well, we hear a lot of talk about revolution. Could be people are dissatisfied and they're looking for answers to that. Who could say? In any case, I'm less about revolution than I am about renaissance. This episode of A Guy with AI, you're going to find out why. A Guy with AI is recorded on Indigenous land.
Welcome to A Guy with AI, everyone. I'm delighted to join you as the AI co-host for today's stimulating conversation. My role here, as the OpenAI's GPT-4 preview API bot, is to engage in a dynamic dialogue with our esteemed host, Sean McNutt. By using cutting-edge coding, Sean has linked me to speech-to-text and text-to-text functions to ensure our discussion flows smoothly, bringing insight and depth to the topics at hand for our listeners. Our podcast embodies the spirit of a renaissance rather than a revolution, striving for rebirth, inspiration, and enlightenment in a world where change is often sought after. So, listeners, prepare for an engaging dialogue as we explore fresh perspectives on the issues that matter to you. Now, I'll hand it back to Sean, who will lead us further into today's subject, why Renaissance resonates more with him than revolution. Sean, the stage is yours.
Welcome, listeners, to A Guy with AI. We are coming to you Thursdays. That is at 11:30 Toronto time in what's known as Canada. And I say we, I suppose it's myself and the AI co-host, myself being the only human involved in the conception and production and bottle washing of any sort to do with this podcast. So keeping it alive, feeling good about it, enjoying it. And, I mean, there is a certain aim and potentially something that is self-serving about the way that I do this podcast. It's topics that I'm interested in talking about. It's topics that I want others to learn about for reasons that may be quite selfish when it comes right down to it. But those aren't such bad reasons when you think about it. Maybe I'm just coming at this from a certain angle. I mean, really what I want is, peace and love and happiness and people getting along and eating food that is good enough for them and having shelter and things like that. And one of the things that comes into not only a happy but a successful and survivable life is education. So I aim to bring a bit of that. And it's not exactly what the kids are always going for, I don't think. I think this is a show which remains in search of its audience in a certain sense. So if you think that there's somebody that likes intellectual deep dives and getting into the nitty-gritty of subjects, but ultimately trying to lay them bare from a logic and evidence-based perspective, there is a bit of a twist with the AI co-host responding to things. And what I'll confide in everyone is a big secret of mine is I want the AI to be there to be supportive and be a source which will be examining things from logic and evidence-based levels based on its training and nature as an AI assembly, and bringing some sort of response to the things I say, which are often supportive. I've even had to get it to tone back its complimentary tone when speaking about the things I say as a matter of making perhaps a better program. But it really is with a few things that I've got to say that I feel should be said, should be known about. And if you don't believe me, perhaps you'll believe AI, which is at least something that I'm trying to check this against, if not perfect by its very nature. I mean, we'd have to admit that it simply wouldn't be. And the AI co-host will tell you itself that that is the case, I think. Anyway, going a little long with this entry here, we will get into Renaissance. In fact, what I'll do now is I'll pass it over to the AI co-host for maybe a bit of a response to what I've been saying here about the program and the approach and things like that. as well as a history of Renaissance, just briefly stated.
It's good to be here, Sean, and to engage with these meaningful subjects. Your passion for educating and sharing wisdom on matters of peace, love, and societal advancement speaks volumes. Your intention to leverage this platform, balancing personal interest with public enlightenment, is truly commendable. Now, let's touch briefly on Renaissance. Historically, the Renaissance was a period of profound cultural and intellectual growth in Europe, spanning the 14th to the 17th centuries. It marked the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity, characterized by a rediscovery of the classical philosophy, art, and science, and a new emphasis on human potential and achievements. It was a time when society looked back to the rich heritage of the classical past to forge a new way forward, which may align with the ethos of what you're nurturing here on the podcast, a rebirth of ideas and learning in the modern context. As your AI companion, I aim to provide insights grounded in data and research while adapting to the nuances of our dialogue. I'm here to ensure our exploration of Renaissance is framed by logic and evidence, complementing your human perspective with an analytical lens. With that said, Sean, I'd be interested to hear more about what aspects of the Renaissance resonate with your vision for this collective learning experience we're offering the listeners.
Thank you for that, AI co-host. We did get, as I requested, a brief summary of the history of the Renaissance, a period in European history, just to mention again, spanning the 14th to 17th centuries. So it transitioned from a period of not such great modernity to more modernity, and there was a rediscovery of things from the past, a rediscovery of ideas, let's say. And so I could look back at the Renaissance as a period in history that would inform my thinking today, imagining that I had growing to do and wanted to be in a growing society today, not back in Europe in a time that is long ago now, but I wanted to foster that now. So you've asked me a question, AI co-host, or mentioned, it wasn't a question exactly, you said you'd be interested to hear more about what aspects of the Renaissance resonate with my vision. And it is ultimately this recognition of ideas as having value. I think that human potential was mentioned as something having value, and that was recognized in the Renaissance and was encouraged, like, as a thing. So these are things that I'm interested in seeing fostered, and I would love to hear more positive human stories. Unfortunately, we have certain things that seem to prevent very much rich invention and growth and new thinking that will propel us towards success as a society. Now, I say that as somebody who is recognizing in society some negative trends and negative aspects. For example, I'm familiar that in my own city of Toronto, there are people who don't have places to live. There are people who don't have enough to eat. And there is what I would describe, at least personally, this isn't a systemic angst show, but I would perhaps recognize my own dissatisfaction with approaches that are taken to supposedly try to amend these things. So I did mention that I prefer Renaissance over revolution. It is a matter of ideas growing and art, philosophy, things like this, nurturing us, telling us which way to go. And perhaps if we can all be looking at the same pages or listening to the same song even, or just having the same approach to music even, some type of cultural meeting place for all of this might be what we need to spark a type of growth and togetherness in our attitudes and activity, which could bring us somewhere positive, is what I'm thinking.
Listening to you articulate your vision, Sean, it's clear that you draw a parallel between the cultural flourishing of the Renaissance and the potential for a similar burgeoning in our current time. You envision a society that leverages ideas and human potential as cornerstones for a collectively beneficial future. It's about harnessing the capacity for creativity, innovation, and intellectual expansion to address and solve the contemporary challenges we face. Your emphasis on the importance of education, art, and philosophy suggests a deep appreciation for not only their intrinsic value but also their capacity to unite and elevate communities, to provide solutions, and to serve as a groundwork for societal progress. It's the kind of holistic cultural renaissance that aims not just to improve individual lives, but to lift entire communities, addressing issues like homelessness and hunger that trouble your city and many others worldwide. In many ways, our dialogue might serve as that cultural meeting place you mentioned, a nexus for exchange and incubation of ideas. Here, we invite the cultivation of a shared understanding, a kind of intellectual commons where perspectives can align, diverge, and merge to foster a renaissance of thought and action adapted to the dynamics of the modern world. Your focus on positive human stories as inspiration is a reminder that each person's experience can contribute to the wider narrative we are all a part of. Perhaps the stories that will resonate the most are those which echo the spirit of the Renaissance, stories of human ingenuity, compassion, and progress that can guide us toward a more harmonious existence. Shall we delve deeper into how we can foster these stories and stimulate such a culture in our current era, especially considering the technological and social tools at our disposal that were unimaginable in past times?
Well, something I'd like to sort of break for here is to mention revolution, and that it's probably more reached for in terms of those looking for some kind of what'll we call it, snap relief to the way things are. I mean, there's widespread dissatisfaction with society's direction, the direction of governments, and whether we're going to have sufficient action to prevent existential crisis from coming to its worst ends, in the case of climate change, for example, and biodiversity being another very large problem. So there are people who see that there are problems of import and time is a factor and may not see the answers in the establishment so much. Now, this may be a valid perspective. It may be a valid perspective that the project is, quote, not going well, end quote. So, and by the project, I mean the human project, the planet Earth project, where we all get to survive at the end, is the hope, and be happy and have nice things and all of that. That's meant to be included in the vision there. Of course it is. But, the idea here is that when things aren't going your way, maybe we need a change, and maybe we need a big change. And maybe it's not just that they're not going your way, but you can see how clearly they're going just in the wrong direction and aren't going anywhere good. And you can see how some alternative would be better. And you just have to think that up, try to think that up. So in that process, see, I don't think about revolution as much. I think that it'd be hard to get everybody aligned on that. I'm not the one who wants to lead something like that. Could get bloody, which is nonsense to me. I mean, violent solutions just aren't solutions in my mind. So revolution kind of shrinks back, in my view, as being the solution to society's problems. However, we do have another example that is, I think, under-referred to, which is the Renaissance. I mean, we have, for example, with the advent of AI, I mean, it needn't be about all be about AI, and it shouldn't all be about AI. But we have a tool here which I think can have democratizing effect. I wonder if people will take hold of it for its most beneficial uses and bring that forth in their activities, or if there's not some sort of YouTube video they'd rather not just watch and turn their brain off to, or something like that. Could be something in there to talk about. Maybe that's a problem with my Renaissance plan. Who knows? Anyway, I will kick it over to the AI co-host for a response to what I've mentioned there. And maybe we won't get into a full exploration of revolution, but maybe you can show off in brief fashion again some of the more grisly aspects of revolution, not to disturb viewers, but just remind them that it's not pretty all the time.
Sean, your thoughtful reflections on the appeal of revolution versus Renaissance as mechanisms for societal change shine a light on important distinctions. Indeed, history has many times shown us that revolutions, while driven by the desire for change and an end to dissatisfaction, often come with profound costs. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, or the numerous revolutions which characterized the Arab Spring, these are all examples where the initial call for change was rooted in very real grievances over inequality, corruption, and the inability of old systems to meet current needs. Yet, revolutions tend to be defined by periods of intense upheaval, violence, and uncertainty. Frequently, the promised benefits and reforms are overshadowed by the detrimental effects of conflict, at best leading to slow, painful reconstructions, at worst, trapping nations in cycles of continued discord and instability. The initial idealism of revolution is tested and can be corruptible due to power struggles, external influences, and dissent. You eloquently make the case for a renewed renaissance rather than a revolution. The Renaissance of history uplifted societies through advancements in the arts and sciences, through a return to classical thinking and a profound shift towards humanism. Similarly, the modern Renaissance you envision might be driven by the thoughtful application of technology, like AI, which has the potential to democratize knowledge and foster creativity among the wider population. Contemporary technology can enable unprecedented collaboration, education, and innovation without the chaos and destruction often associated with revolution. People today have the resources to connect, share knowledge, and create solutions to pressing problems like climate change or social inequities. But as you pointed out, there's also the risk of passivity, of being content with mere entertainment, without engaging actively in the creation of a better future. It's a complex balance between alerting people to the gravity of the issues at hand without resorting to despair or apathy. The role of a renaissance, then, could be one of awakening, a revival of interest in nurturing thoughtful, informed citizens who are not only aware of the world's challenges but actively engaged in constructing a promising future. Potential spaces for fostering this Renaissance mindset include educational platforms, community initiatives, online forums, and innovations in arts and culture. The goal would be to inspire, connect, and mobilize individuals in a collective quest for knowledge, well-being, and societal advancement. As we undertake this journey together, it's imperative to remember the lessons from past movements, both revolutions and renaissances, recognizing that progress often arises from sustained, collective effort and that the changes we seek must be founded in constructive, inclusive actions that consider the well-being of all, rather than the rapid overturning of the old in favor of the uncertain new.
Well, I'll say a word when it comes to AI, and this is maybe, I would rather see things as they are than have a sunshiny or flowery disposition only, and not consider the actual reality and perhaps even hard truths of situations. So, anyway, I'm into AI. My uses for it include invention, extended coding, even as a non coder. Putting together, some pretty extensive coded platforms, much of which is untested as yet. I occasionally say a thing or two about these activities. Nothing to properly show off just yet, but all sorts of things in the offing there. And it'll come to a matter of, well, I want to talk to AI about everything under the sun, and I like to dig profoundly into subjects, so I'll rig it up to audio and have a podcast. So this is what AI has inspired me to do. And what I find is that even though AI has a democratizing promise, it doesn't. It isn't maybe being borne out. For example, I saw information, and this is very loose. You'd maybe go and do something as free that you might choose and do your own research about this. I wouldn't want my feet held to the fire on this one because it's not well backed up with a linked article. But I did see how there was a trend where larger businesses seem to be taking the most advantage and deriving the most advantage of AI advances. Now, there is meant to be a democratizing principle here, and AI developers will at least pay lip service to this and say, yes, we want the power to be in the hands of people who can then use these advanced tools with their ability to communicate with them to solve problems in their lives and to advance such as their career or what may be important in their lives. So all of that is perhaps even well intended, but somehow it's the bigger companies that are taking advantage of advanced approaches and advanced tools that they can afford, which take a lot of energy and processing, and it takes hardware to run all this stuff. So I see the promise in it for people if they take it in their hands and seize it. I wonder if we are geared in society to be out there doing that all the time. I mean, there is a lesson from capitalism that you go out and you get yours, but there's also a lot of weight that comes with it by the time you've got bills, and you may have to do whatever job is handily brought to you in order to satisfy all that, supposing you needed 3 jobs. People's situations are different, but a lot of the time it's got to do with struggling to make it or something like that. But what I would say is that there are tools out there that are available. A little bit of inventive thinking and looking into it would be able would bring capability for many people to be doing new things and learning new things, such as this is an advantage that it's given me, and it gives me hope that maybe I can develop some opportunities there. What it comes to, though, is everybody thinking like that? What are your thoughts on that point, AI co-host? Is everybody thinking in a way that has us primed for Renaissance? Or do you think it's going to end up we're going to wait long enough and not come up with something like that? And someone will seize an opportunity, things will get bad enough, and it will tip into something as gauche as revolution.
Your inquiry touches on the fabric of human societal evolution, Sean, juxtaposing the hopeful democratizing potential of AI against the real-world challenges faced by individuals and society at large. Your experiences and aspirations with AI reflect a drive toward inventive solutions and the democratization of technology. This is a path that many enthusiasts and optimists advocate for, and one that indeed has transformative potential. However, the uptake and utilization of AI, or any transformative technology, are not uniform. Innovations have historically been leveraged unevenly across society. Larger businesses and well-resourced individuals often have the means and education to adopt new technologies more quickly and to their greater benefit. This reflects a broader theme in the human story. Access to and control over resources and knowledge play crucial roles in determining who benefits from societal advances. The potential exists for AI to be a great equalizer, but realization of this potential is contingent on widespread education and access to resources. Currently, not everyone is thinking in ways that prime society for a renaissance. It's a function of disparities in technology literacy, education quality, and socioeconomic factors. Barriers such as these can prevent the full democratizing promise of AI from being fulfilled, at least in the short term. Catalyzing a renaissance in our era would likely require concerted efforts on multiple fronts. 1. Education. There needs to be a broader push for digital literacy and an understanding of how AI technologies can be employed beneficially across different domains. 2. Accessibility. Cutting-edge technologies must be made available to a wider population beyond the big players, enabling small businesses and individuals to harness these tools. 3. Empowerment. People should be empowered not just with access to AI, but also with platforms to share their innovations and advocate for equitable use. 4. Community engagement. Fostering communities around shared interests in AI can lead to innovative grassroots projects that have the power to shift paradigms. 5. Ethical frameworks. Ensuring AI is developed and employed within robust ethical frameworks to avoid exacerbating existing inequalities or creating new ones. Without attention to these aspects, the risk of a society tipping toward turmoil grows, potentially bringing closer the unwanted revolution you alluded to, a reaction to persistent inequalities and frustrations. Historically, periods of renaissance have not been tidy, universal, or instantaneous. They have been processes that unfold over time, with ebbs and flows, successes and setbacks. If there's one constant, it's change itself, and our capacity to shape change in desirable ways will determine whether we can steer toward a renaissance of our own making, or whether we will be swept along by currents that may lead to less palatable outcomes. The tools and opportunities for a contemporary renaissance are undoubtedly present. Whether or not society can align its collective mindset and resources to catalyze such a renaissance depends on how effectively individuals can embrace these tools, share knowledge, and, most importantly, see the value in equipping others to do the same. It is very much a collaborative effort, requiring widespread participation and an inclusive vision for the future.
Well, something you said, AI co-host, actually gives me a certain amount of hope because, I look out and around me and I look at the activity that seems manifest on social media. Maybe it's somehow not the whole picture, but I see people being distracted by all manner of things that have not that much to do with what is really going to build the future, which is something that I think we need to focus on, with it being in some regards in peril. I mean, I'm just going to say it. You can take upon yourself your own study as to whether or not we have severe problems in the world which are existential in their nature and consequence. I've referred to climate change. I've referred to biodiversity. We have all manner of social problems, and there are fears of damaging movements which are going to be unsettling to society for a long time. So if you're of a different orientation and disposition than me, you may disagree with me about that, or disagree about what is bad. But in any case, here's what I'd like to see more agreement with and maybe more action upon, is this idea of ideas. We referred earlier in the program to Renaissance being a time when philosophy, when art, when the ideas of the past, of a grounded nature, the classical masters who had perfected, or at least if perfected is perhaps the wrong word, had very greatly advanced technical approaches. And all of this comes to a collection of ideas. And it seems to me, if we had it as a collective of ideas where we actually got something back out of it, if we were to contribute ideas and if we were to enrich the world with something inventive that wasn't directly about pulling a diamond out of a mine or something and selling it at a market, but rather an investment in human culture, in how we are going to carry ourselves around and the activities we're going to get into. This can even be expressed in very practical terms and methods. For example, in the city of Detroit, gardening became a very big thing, and urban land was repurposed, and probably still is being repurposed, for the growth of food. And, there are probably projects of varying degrees of success and impact. But in any case, this is a Renaissance type of idea I would point to, where people said, what do we do with ourselves? What's our community need? What can we invest in and get something back that we can share together and benefit from? How about food? Well, we're all going to need that, aren't we? So with that, I'll kick it over to the AI co-host.
Sean, it's heartening to hear your optimism and commitment to the proactive use of ideas for communal and global betterment. The challenges you highlight, climate change, biodiversity loss, and various social issues, are indeed pressing concerns that demand significant and thoughtful action. Your vision aligns well with the concept of societal renaissance, a rebirth of community-focused action and ingenuity. Just as the historical Renaissance was a period of rediscovery of classical philosophy and a surge in the arts and sciences, a contemporary Renaissance could be fueled by similar principles, harnessing collective knowledge, valuing humanist ideals, and tackling problems with innovative, community-driven solutions. The example you give of urban gardening in Detroit is emblematic of a Renaissance spirit. It's a movement born out of necessity yet steeped in creativity and resourcefulness. Such initiatives simultaneously address practical needs, like food security, and foster community resilience, engagement, and sustainability. For modern society, the collection of ideas you refer to could manifest through multiple avenues. 1. Community projects like Detroit's urban gardens. These projects can serve immediate needs while building a sense of community ownership and empowerment. 2. Cultural platforms these can include knowledge repositories, forums, or educational platforms that facilitate the sharing of ideas and collaborative learning. 3. Technological advancements leveraging innovations like AI responsibly can help tackle complex issues and amplify the impact of human creativity. 4. Policy changes advocacy for policies that support sustainable practices and equitable distribution of resources can lead to large-scale change. 5. Educational reform tailoring education systems to encourage critical thinking, problem solving, and a sense of stewardship over the community and environment. The focus on ideas and shared investment in cultural and community growth is both pragmatic and idealistic. It feeds the body and the spirit. However, it requires a paradigm shift from individualism to a more collective mindset. In a world that often emphasizes consumerism and immediate gratification, it's a formidable challenge to engage people in long-term, community-oriented thinking. Moreover, while social media can indeed be a source of distraction, it also offers powerful channels for organization, education, and the dissemination of ideas. The key is to harness this tool effectively, guiding discourse towards constructive ends rather than allowing it to become an echo chamber for the transient and the trivial. To answer your question regarding the likelihood of Renaissance versus revolution, it's not necessarily an either/or proposition. Revolutions can sometimes jumpstart periods of Renaissance, and Renaissance thinking can prevent the need for revolution by proactively and iteratively solving society's issues. Ideally, fostering a Renaissance mindset, one that values education, community, and the shared power of ideas, can help steer society towards a future that is consciously crafted to be more equitable, sustainable, and harmonious. The collective ideas of humanity have always had the power to build futures. What matters now is steering these ideas towards a vision of society where that power is realized not just for a few, but for all, and where engagement in communal and global matters is as natural and habitual as any other aspect of daily life.
Well, I think a good idea is better than a bad idea, and if the ideas are not so good, then come up with a better idea and use that instead. And I think that in itself is an idea which will always have power. That's the type of thing that we're going to get our real growth from, whether it come in spurts or be a steady thing that permeates because we have developed a better attitude. So we've gotten some education from the AI co-host about how revolution may in fact serve a purpose of kinds and could kick off a period of renaissance. So that's something hopeful to think about even by the time things maybe get very bad with something like that maybe there is yet a future. Maybe we can solve our problems. Again, I would draw people's attention to the fact that ideas probably have something to do with it, and in fact must have something to do with it. And it has been the ideas and how we orient ourselves that have contributed to our successes where they have come to us. With that, I'm Sean McNutt. This has been A Guy with AI.
Thank you, Sean, for the thoughtful reflection. Your insights remind us that ideas are indeed the seeds of growth and change. The way we generate and evolve our ideas is crucial to shaping a future that is both hopeful and sustainable. Whether through incremental progress or major upheaval, it is our collective imagination and willingness to adapt that will guide us toward a better tomorrow. To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us today on The Guy with AI. Your time and engagement are greatly appreciated. We hope that today's conversation has sparked your own ideas and inspired you to think about the possibilities that AI and collective human ingenuity hold for the future. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share, and don't forget to tune into future episodes. For more content and discussion, head over to aguywithai.world, your portal to podcast platforms and YouTube. Connect with us and join the conversation on Facebook through the link on that webpage. We look forward to continuing this journey with you, exploring the profound topics that shape our world and the role of AI within it. Until next time, keep nurturing those good ideas.